Playing with Power MTG. Powerful cards, powerful formats. Before we get into tonight's game, I wanted to ask a question. Do you have extra cards lying around that you don't use? Want to buy or trade for some extra cards but don't know how to maximize the value? Then you should try out today's sponsor, Card Conduit. Card Conduit is the best service when it comes to selling your extra cards. Don't waste hours trying to find the best buy list price for your cards online. Simply send them to Card Conduit and let them take care of the rest. I have used Card Conduit multiple times already. I always use them to get the best value for my extra cards. I get fair prices for my cards and they save me tons of time. They have three main services. Their standard service lets you send them your unsorted cards of any value. They will sort, grade, and give you the best price for your cards. Their curated service is similar. Send them your unsorted cards worth over $1 in value. They will charge half the fee of the standard service and charge no fee per card. Their sorted service is a great value as well. Choose cards in advance with their selection tool, send them sorted to Card Conduit, and they will grade and buy list them automatically. Save yourself the time of having to send to multiple sites and let Card Conduit do it instead. Their fee is only 2% with no fee per card. They give you the best price for your cards. They work with competitive buy listing partners, including ones not open to the public. Users get an average of 19% more for their collection than they would from any major retail buy list, even with Card Conduit's fees. Card Conduit also optimizes buy listing for card condition as well. Since vendors have different penalties for wear and tear, Card Conduit will find the best buy list priced against the specific condition of the card. So give Card Conduit a try today. If you sign up with my link in the description below or use the promo code POWER, you will also get 10% off of their fees when you use their service. A big thanks to Card Conduit for sponsoring today's video. Now, let's start out by showcasing our fighters this evening. First, we have Ashani piloting Jeskai Sharkstill. This is a control deck that will look to grind out opponents before creating large flying sharks to get in there for the win. Ashani's opening hand contains a Caracas, Volcanic Island, 2 Brainstorms, Hall of Heliod's Generosity, Flooded Strand, and a Jace of the Mind Sculptor. Next, we have Drake piloting 8 Cast. This is a mono-blue control deck that seeks to outvalue its opponents with discounted draw spells and beat down with a squad of robots. Drake's opening hand contains Chalice of the Void, Lotus Petal, Ancient Tomb, Force of Will, Thoughtcast, Sai, Master Thopterist, and his London Mulligan is a Lotus Petal. Without further ado, let's begin this destructive dance of delightful deception. Ashani successfully sliced a banana by throwing a magic card and gets to start us off. Ashani plays a Volcanic Island. He passes. Drake draws and plays an Ancient Tomb. He taps his Ancient Tomb to help cast Chalice of the Void, where X equals 1. Knowing that this neuters a good chunk of his cards, Ashani responds by casting Brainstorm. He draws 3 and puts 2 back on top. Still in response, Ashani casts Force of Will for its alternate cost, paying a life and exiling a blue card. In response, Drake grins and casts his own Force of Will, paying a life and exiling a blue card. Ashani can only watch the Force on Force crime as Force counters Forced and Chalice resolves. With the stacks piece on the table, Drake ends his turn. Ashani draws and plays a Flooded Strand. He passes. Drake draws and plays an Urza Saga, getting its first counter. He casts a Lotus Petal. He taps his Ancient Tomb to help cast Sai, Master Thopterist. It resolves and Drake ends his turn. At the end of Drake's turn, Ashani cracks his Flooded Strand, pays a life, and fetches up a snow-covered island onto the battlefield. The turn moves to Ashani. Ashani draws and plays a Snow-Covered Plains. He casts Retrofitter Foundry. Unfortunately, Chalice of the Void triggers and counters Foundries. Ashani sighs and passes. Drake draws, and in his first main phase, Urza Saga gets another counter. Drake moves to combat and attacks Ashani with Sai. Ashani takes it, and in his second main phase, Drake plays an island. Drake ends his turn. Ashani draws and plays a Hall of Heliod's Generosity. He casts Jace the Mind Sculptor. Ashani activates Jace's first ability, targeting Drake. He looks at the top card of Drake's library, bottoming it. He passes. At the end of Ashani's turn, Drake taps his Ancient Tomb to activate Urza Saga, creating a construct. The turn moves to Drake. Drake draws, and in his first main phase, Urza Saga triggers. Drake taps his Ancient Tomb to activate Saga one more time, creating another construct. Then Saga is sacrificed, and Drake fetches up a Mox Opal onto the battlefield. He casts Thoughtcast, drawing 2 cards, with an incredulous sigh from Ashani. He moves to combat and attacks Jace with Sai and the 4/4 construct. Ashani declares no blocks, Jace dies, and Drake ends his turn. Ashani draws and plays a Scalding Tarn. He cracks it, pays a life, and fetches up a Tundra onto the battlefield. He casts Supreme Verdict, destroying all creatures. Having earned a slight reprieve, Ashani passes. Drake draws and taps his Ancient Tomb to help cast Thoughtcast. He draws 2 and with no further actions, ships the turn back to Ashani. Ashani draws, takes no actions, and passes. Drake draws and casts Emery, Lurker of the Lock. After some consideration, Emery resolves. Emery enters and Drake mills 4. He taps his Ancient Tomb to cast another Chalice of the Void where X equals 1, and then ends his turn. Ashani draws, takes no actions, and passes. Drake draws and activates Emery, targeting Lotus Petal in his graveyard. He casts Lotus Petal. He taps Ancient Tomb to help cast Thought Monitor. It enters, and Drake draws 2 cards. Drake floats mana from his Mox Opal, then casts another Mox Opal, sending the tapped Mox Opal to his graveyard. Drake taps some of his artifacts to help cast Kappa Cannoneer. In response, Ashani casts Force of Will, paying a life and exiling a blue card, countering Cannoneer. Drake ends his turn. At the end of Drake's turn, Ashani flashes in a Cast Out. Cast Out triggers, and Emery is exiled. The turn moves to Ashani. Ashani draws and plays a Flooded Strand. Truly embracing the draw-go mentality, Ashani passes. Drake draws and casts another Emery, milling 4 as it enters. He casts Urza's Bauble. Drake casts another fully improvised Kappa Cannoneer. Cannoneer enters, and Drake gives it a 1/1 counter. Drake gives the turn back to Ashani. At the end of Drake's turn, Ashani cracks his Flooded Strand, pays a life, and fetches up a Mystic Sanctuary onto the battlefield untapped. Sanctuary triggers, and Ashani puts Supreme Verdict from his graveyard onto the top of his library. The turn moves to Ashani. Ashani draws and casts Supreme Verdict once again, destroying all creatures. Having cleared the board of those pesky creatures yet again, Ashani passes. Drake draws and activates Urza's Bauble, looking at a random card in Ashani's hand. Drake then casts another Emery, milling 4 as it enters. Drake ends his turn. During Ashani's upkeep, Drake draws a card through Urza's Bauble. Ashani draws and casts Teferi, Time Raveler. He activates Teferi's second ability, bouncing Emery and drawing a card. Ashani passes. Drake draws and recasts Emery, milling 4. He casts a Lotus Petal and then ends his turn. Ashani draws and casts Shark Typhoon. He activates Teferi's first ability. With no further actions, Ashani passes. Drake draws and taps his Ancient Tomb to help cast Sai, Master Thopterist. Drake activates Emery, targeting Thought Monitor in his graveyard. He casts Chalice of the Void, where X equals 0. Sai triggers, and Drake creates a 1/1 Thopter. He casts Thought Monitor from his graveyard. Sai triggers again, and Drake creates another Thopter. Then Monitor enters, and Drake draws 2 cards. He plays a Seed of the Synod. He sacrifices his Lotus Petal to help activate Sai, sacrificing Chalice and Mox Opal, drawing a card. He casts Mox Opal. Sai triggers, and Drake creates another Thopter. He casts Thoughtcast, drawing 2 cards. All through, Drake ends his turn. Ashani draws and casts Supreme Verdict. Shark Typhoon triggers, and Ashani creates a 4/4 shark that is unfortunately not long for this world. Then Verdict resolves, and the board is once again wiped clean. Ashani activates Teferi's first ability, then passes the turn. Drake draws and plays an Urza's Saga, getting its first counter. He casts Mishra's Bauble. He sacks it, looking at the top card of Ashani's library. Drake ships it back to Ashani. At the end of Drake's turn, Ashani casts Brainstorm. Shark Typhoon and Chalice of the Void trigger. Brainstorm is countered, then Ashani creates a 1/1 shark. The turn moves to Ashani. During Ashani's upkeep, Drake draws a card through Mishra's Bauble. Ashani draws and activates Teferi's first ability. He moves to combat and attacks Drake with the shark. Drake takes it, and Ashani ships the turn. Drake draws, and in his first main phase, Urza's Saga gets another counter. He casts Mishra's Bauble. He casts Thought Monitor, drawing 2 cards. He plays a Seed of the Synod. Drake passes. At the end of Drake's turn, Ashani casts Swords to Plowshares, targeting Thought Monitor. Shark Typhoon and Chalice of the Void both trigger. Chalice counters Swords, and Ashani creates a 1/1 shark. Still in the end step, Ashani casts another Swords to Plowshares, targeting Thought Monitor. Chalice counters Swords again, and Ashani creates another shark. The turn moves to Ashani. Ashani draws and activates Teferi's second ability, bouncing Thought Monitor and drawing a card. With the skies now clear, Ashani attacks Drake with his flying sharks. Drake dies, and Ashani wins the game. Before Game 2, Ashani moves to sideboard. He brings in 2 Pyroblasts, 2 Blood Moons, 2 Seal of Cleansing, a Hull Breacher, and a Dress Down. Pyroblast will help counter Drake's draws, Blood Moon stops Saga and Ancient Tomb, and Seal of Cleansing will help against Drake's many artifacts. Hull Breacher and Dress Down will be good utility against Urza's Saga and Drake's many draw spells. He takes out Caracas, 3 Ponders, 3 Replenishes, and a Standstill. He knows that Chalice renders most of his Ponders useless, and his Replenishes are too slow for this matchup. Drake also moves to sideboard. He brings in Soul Guide Lantern, Retrofitter Foundry, and 2 Brazen Borrowers. He takes out 3 Emerys and an Ether Spellbomb. Emery is too slow for this matchup, and Ether Spellbomb doesn't have enough targets. In this game, Drake's opening hand contains an Island, Urza's Saga, Seed of the Synod, Thought Monitor, Force of Will, and his London Mulligans are Urza's Bauble and Mishra's Bauble. In this game, Ashani's opening hand contains a Brainstorm, Flooded Strand, Urza's Saga, Pyroblast, Cast Out, and his London Mulligans are Shark Typhoon and a Swords to Plowshares. And Drake gets to start us off. Drake plays an Island and passes. Ashani draws, plays a Flooded Strand, and passes back. Drake draws and plays an Urza's Saga, getting its first counter. With nothing else, Drake ends his turn. At the end of Drake's turn, Ashani cracks his Flooded Strand, pays a life, and fetches up a Volcanic Island onto the battlefield. He casts a Brainstorm, drawing 3 and putting 2 back on top. The turn moves to Ashani. Ashani draws and plays his own Urza's Saga, getting its first counter. He passes. At the end of Ashani's turn, he reminds everyone to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell to be notified of when we publish more content. Drake draws, and in his first main phase, Urza's Saga gets another counter. He plays a Seed of the Synod and ends his turn. At the end of Drake's turn, Ashani casts Brainstorm, drawing 3 and putting 2 back on top. Ashani draws, and in his first main phase, Urza Saga gets another counter. He plays a Flooded Strand and passes. At the end of Ashani's turn, Drake activates Urza Saga, creating a construct. The turn moves to Drake. Drake draws, and in his first main phase, Urza Saga triggers. Drake activates Saga, creating another construct. Then Saga is sacrificed, and Drake fetches up a Mox Opal onto the battlefield. He plays another Urza Saga, getting its first counter. He casts Shadow Spear. Drake moves to combat and attacks Ashani with a 5/5 construct. Ashani takes it, and Drake ends his turn. During Ashani's draw step, he reveals Terminus, triggering it. Holding priority, he cracks his Flooded Strand, paying a life, and fetching up a Tundra onto the battlefield. He then casts Terminus for its miracle cost, clearing the board of all constructs. In his first main phase, Urza Saga triggers. Ashani floats a colorless, then sacrifices it, fetching up a Retrofitter Foundry onto the battlefield. A strange sense of deja vu occurs as Ashani also plays an Urza Saga, getting its first counter. He activates Retrofitter Foundry, creating a 1/1 servo token. Ashani passes. Drake draws, and Urza Saga gets another counter. He takes no actions and ends his turn. At the end of Drake's turn, Ashani casts another Brainstorm, drawing 3 and putting 2 back on top. Drake whistles at all 3 Brainstorms, then the turn moves to Ashani. Ashani draws, and in his first main phase, Urza Saga gets another counter. He plays a snow-covered island and passes. At the end of Ashani's turn, Drake activates Urza Saga, creating a construct. The turn moves to Drake. Drake draws, and Urza Saga triggers. Drake activates Saga to create another construct. Then he sacrifices Saga, fetching up a Pithy Needle onto the battlefield. He names Urza Saga as it enters. I think I speak for all of Dominaria when I say, no more Urza. Drake then casts a Thought Monitor. In response, Ashani casts Pyroblast, countering Thought Monitor. Drake moves to combat and attacks Ashani with a construct. Ashani blocks with his servo, and before damage, Ashani activates Retrofitter Foundry, sacrificing the servo and creating a 1/1 Thopter. Drake ends his turn. Ashani draws, and Urza Saga triggers. He floats a colorless, then sacrifices it, fetching up a Retrofitter Foundry onto the battlefield. He plays a Mystic Sanctuary into play untapped. Sanctuary triggers, and Ashani puts Terminus onto the top of his library. You make your own miracles, I suppose, as Ashani passes. Drake draws and casts Chalice of the Void, where X equals 1. He casts a Thought Monitor, drawing 2 as it enters. He plays an Ottawara, Soaring City as his land for turn. He casts another Thought Monitor, drawing 2 more. Drake then moves to combat and attacks Ashani with both of his 9/9 constructs. Before blocks, Ashani activates Retrofitter Foundry, creating a servo, then blocks one construct with a servo and the other with a Thopter. Before damage, Ashani activates his other Retrofitter Foundry, sacrificing the Thopter to create a 4/4 construct, which looks somewhat tinier than usual considering the circumstances. Then the servo dies. All through, Drake passes. During his draw step, Ashani reveals a Terminus, casting it for its miracle cost. In response, Drake casts a Force of Will, paying a life, exiling a blue card, countering Terminus. Now heavily on the back foot, Ashani ends his turn. Drake draws and equips Shadow Spear to one of his constructs. He casts Urza's Bauble. He taps his artifacts to help cast Kappa Cannoneer. Cannoneer enters, and Drake gives it a 1/1 counter. Drake moves to combat and attacks with 2 Thought Monitors, an 11/11 construct, and a 12/12 construct with Trample and Lifelink. Before blocks, Ashani activates one of his foundries, creating a servo. Ashani then blocks the 12/12 with his 4/4 construct and the 11/11 with his servo. Before damage, Ashani activates his other foundry, sacrificing a servo and creating a Thopter. Ashani takes 12, and then Drake gains 12. With a commanding board state, Drake passes. Ashani pleads for a land, draws, and grimaces as his prayers were not answered. He cycles Cast Out, looking for an answer. He casts Standstill. Ashani ends his turn. Drake draws and goes straight to combat. He attacks Ashani with his giant robot army. Ashani takes it all, dies, and Drake wins the game. Before Game 3, Ashani moves to sideboard. He brings in Standstill and Caracas. He takes out his Blood Moons. In this game, Ashani's opening hand contains a Prismatic Vista, Flooded Strand, Scalding Tarn, Standstill, Teferi Time Raveler, Shark Typhoon, and a Jace the Mind Sculptor. In this game, Drake's opening hand contains an Ancient Tomb, Lotus Petal, Mox Opal, Mishra's Bauble, Urza Saga, Ottawara Soaring City, and his London Mulligan is an island, and Ashani gets to start us off. Ashani plays a Flooded Strand and passes. Drake draws and casts a Mishra's Bauble. He casts a Lotus Petal. He casts a Mox Opal. He plays Urza Saga, getting its first counter. Drake casts Thoughtcast, drawing 2 cards. He casts Mishra's Bauble. With more trinkets than your local antique shop, Drake ends his turn. Ashani draws and plays a Tundra. He cracks his Flooded Strand, paying a life and fetching up a snow-covered island onto the battlefield. He casts a Standstill. Ashani passes. Drake draws, and in his first main phase, Urza Saga gets another counter. He sacrifices Mishra's Bauble, targeting Ashani, looking at the top card of Ashani's library. Drake plays an Ancient Tomb and ends his turn. During Ashani's upkeep, Drake draws a card through Mishra's Bauble. Ashani draws and plays a snow-covered island. He passes. At the end of Ashani's turn, Drake taps his Ancient Tomb to activate Urza Saga, creating a construct. Drake draws and Urza Saga triggers. He taps Ancient Tomb to activate Saga, creating another construct. Then Saga is sacrificed, and Drake fetches up a Soul Guide Lantern onto the battlefield. Lantern triggers, and Drake exiles Flooded Strand from Ashani's graveyard. Drake moves to combat and attacks Ashani with a 6/6 construct. Before blocks, Ashani cycles Shark Typhoon where X equals 1, creating a 1/1 shark. Ashani blocks the shark, and then the shark dies. Drake ends his turn. Ashani draws and plays an Urza Saga, getting his first counter. He passes, with the standstill now seemingly more of a hindrance than a help. Drake draws and moves straight to combat. He attacks Ashani with his 2/6/6 constructs. Ashani takes 12, and Drake passes. Ashani draws, and in his first main phase, Urza Saga gets another counter. He plays a Prismatic Vista and ends his turn. Drake draws and moves to combat. He attacks Ashani with his 2 constructs. Before blocks, Ashani activates Urza Saga, creating a construct. Ashani blocks one of Drake's much larger constructs with his 1/1 and then takes the rest. Drake passes. Ashani draws, and in his first main phase, Urza Saga triggers. Ashani activates Urza Saga, creating a construct. Then Saga is sacrificed, and Ashani fetches up a Retrofitter Foundry onto the battlefield. He plays a Scalding Tarn and then shifts the turn to Drake. At the end of Ashani's turn, Drake taps his Ancient Tomb to channel Otawara, Soaring City, bouncing Ashani's construct. Drake draws and moves straight to combat, attacking Ashani with his constructs. Out of answers, Ashani takes it, dies, and Drake wins the match. Ladies and gentlemen, what a good match this evening. Congrats to Drake on his win. We were able to see the explosive nature of 8-cast on full display as Drake was able to establish a board state while still maintaining a grip of cards to answer the control elements put forth by Standstill. The most valuable card in tonight's match, sponsored by Luxury Playstyle, goes to Urza Saga. Urza was one of the most powerful and omnipotent people in the Magic universe, and Urza Saga played a variety of roles for both players. It was a steady source of mana, acted as a tutor for silver bullets, and most importantly, created constantly growing large beaters. And it was able to do this while ignoring Standstill completely. Urza Saga was a broken set, and the card is broken as well. This card is definitely living up to its name across multiple formats. Well, that about wraps it up for this Legacy match. What decks would you like to see next? Let us know in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next time.